The Caribbean is on fire. American warships are circling Venezuela. Fighter jets are performing deadly maneuvers overhead. 11 people are dead after a US strike in international waters. This isn't some distant war or another continent. This is happening right now, in America's own backyard, and the danger is real. It began with drugs, or at least that's what Washington claims. President Trump calls Venezuela a narco state, labeling its leader Nicolas Maduro a drug kingpin. But the response has gone far beyond law enforcement. This is military action, missiles, warplanes, Marines. Lives have been lost, tensions have escalated, and the region that was once a quiet neighbor is now a potential battlefield. How did a dispute over drug trafficking spiral into a potential military showdown? In a region so close to home, can diplomacy survive? And can President Trump, who claims to be the world's greatest peacemaker, actually bring stability to America's backyard? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. The Trump administration says Venezuela is flooding America with narcotics. They blame President Nicolas Maduro. They call him a drug kingpin. Last week, the US military did something unprecedented. They blew up a boat in international waters. 11 people died instantly. Trump claimed the vessel belonged to Tren de Aragua. That's a Venezuelan gang, one he's now labeled a terrorist organization.
On the boat, you had massive amounts of drugs. We have tapes of them speaking. It was massive amounts of drugs coming into our country to kill a lot of people. And everybody fully understands that. In fact, you see it. You see the bags of drugs all over the boat. And they were hit. Obviously, they won't be doing it again. And I think a lot of other people won't be doing it again when they watch that tape.
But here's the twist. This wasn't a Coast Guard operation. This was military action. Warplanes, missiles, death. That changes everything. Venezuela responded with fury. They sent F-16 fighter jets to buzz American destroyers. Think about that for a moment. Venezuelan jets, made in America, now threatening American ships.
Rechazamos de manera categórica las órdenes del gobierno de los Estados Unidos de desplegar fuerzas militares bajo pretextos falsos con la clara intención de imponer políticas ilegales, injerencistas y contrarias al orden constitucional de los estados de América Latina y el Caribe. 3. Denunciamos ante el mundo que el despliegue militar estadounidense en aguas del Caribe, disfrazado de operaciones antidrogas, representa una amenaza a la paz y a la estabilidad de la región y constituye una violación flagrante del derecho internacional y de la Carta de las Naciones Unidas, que consagran el respeto a la soberanía, la igualdad de los estados y la autodeterminación de los pueblos.
Some call it a game of chicken, but games don't usually involve missiles and cannons. The US has deployed 8 warships to the Caribbean. 3 carry over 4,000 Marines. F-35 stealth fighters are now stationed in Puerto Rico. This is the largest American military presence in the Caribbean since the Cold War. The message is clear. Washington means business, but so does Caracas. Here's what makes this truly tragic. America and Venezuela were once best friends. Back in 1835, the US recognized Venezuelan independence. They signed trade deals. They became partners. And then, when oil was discovered, American companies flooded in. Venezuela became a crucial ally during the Cold War. In the 1980s, something symbolic happened. Venezuela bought F-16 fighter jets from America. They were the first South American nation to get them. It was called the Peace Delta Program. Peace, remember that word? Today, those same F-16s are confronting US Navy ships. American-made jets threatening American sailors. The irony is devastating. Hugo Chavez changed everything in 1999. Upon taking office, Chavez reversed the 1990s policies that had opened Venezuela's oil industry to foreign investment, initiating tighter state oversight through new legislation, most notably the 2001 Hydrocarbons Law. Chavez's government openly challenged Venezuela's traditional oil partnership with the United States. At times, it even threatened or actually had cut specific US-bound oil supplies in response to confrontations with American companies. Under Chavez, oil became a central tool for anti-US foreign policy, supporting like-minded regimes and subsidizing friendly nations. He turned Venezuela away from Washington, D.C., toward Moscow, towards Beijing. When Chavez died, Maduro took over. Things got worse, much worse. Elections became fraudulent. The economy collapsed. Millions fled the country. Washington, D.C. imposed sanctions, arms embargoes, travel bans. Maduro called it imperialism. Trump calls Maduro a drug trafficker. Both are probably right in a way. Moreover, after the Russia-Ukraine war began, the United States sought to re-engage with Venezuela to secure alternative oil supplies as Russian energy was sanctioned. The Biden administration initiated direct talks with President Nicolas Maduro's government in early 2022. However, Maduro consistently demanded a complete lifting of US sanctions, accusing Washington of not fulfilling negotiation promises and resisting broader concessions. That's when Washington asked India to keep buying Russian oil to help stabilize global energy markets and keep oil prices in check. But Trump, as you know, is now going after New Delhi for buying crude oil from Moscow.
We kind of got past the ability of saying, oh, just follow America, you have to do exactly as we do. And we take the smaller victories. Like, actually, they bought Russian oil because we wanted somebody to buy Russian oil at a price cap. That was not a violation or anything. It was actually the design of the policy, because as a commodity, we didn't want oil prices going up. And they fulfilled that. During G20, they were able to take Russia to the side and say, take or leave this statement, which was critical about Ukraine. It just took the word Russia out, but it was very clear. And we were able to deliver Europe. They were able to deliver Russia. That boxed in China, and it showed, again, this multiplicative relationship when we get together. So it's complicated, it needs to know history, you need to come in not in a kind of condescending way, but I think once you do that, it's a very loyal relationship, and I would say the people-to-people stuff, given that everybody who's in power there has family, has studied, has served in the United States by and large, it's a real soft or smart power advantage.
Now coming back to Trump-Maduro, American courts are pushing back. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals just ruled against Trump. They said his deportation of Venezuelans is illegal. Trump tried to use a 1798 law, the Alien Enemies Act. It's meant for wartime. Judge Leslie Southwick wasn't having it. He said Tren de Aragua doesn't constitute an invasion, not legally. This matters. If Trump can't legally deport Venezuelans, can he legally bomb them? International lawyers say no. The UN Charter permits force only in self-defense or with Security Council approval. Neither applies here. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is trying to build a coalition. He's touring Latin America, drumming up support. In Mexico, he created a new security group, Joint Operations Against Cartels, shared intelligence, coordinated responses. But Mexico's president was careful. She emphasized sovereignty, territorial integrity. Translation: no US military operations on Mexican soil.
Interdiction doesn't work because these drug cartels, what they do is they know they're going to lose 2% of their cargo. They bake it into their economics. What will stop them is when you blow them up, when you get rid of them. So they were designated as what they are narco-terrorist organizations. So the same information and the same intelligence mechanisms with maybe a higher focus was used to determine that a drug boat was headed towards eventually the United States, and instead of interdicting it on the president's orders, he blew it up.
Ecuador is different. They're welcoming US troops, even discussing new American bases. Why? Because Ecuador is drowning in violence. 5,000 murders this year alone. Homicides up 40%. President Daniel Noboa needs help, American help. But Ecuador owes billions to China. Geopolitics isn't simple. Meanwhile, Maduro is playing a different game. He's embracing Chinese technology. Last week, he displayed a Huawei phone, a gift from Xi Jinping. He claimed American spies can't hack it.
Impresionante. Ahí me llega todo por aquí. Teléfono que me regaló, mira, Xi Jinping. Esto me lo regaló Xi Jinping. Un Huawei. Mira. El mejor teléfono del mundo. El Huawei. Y no te lo pueden intervenir los gringos. Ni los aviones espías, ni los satélites.
Security experts laughed. Huawei devices are actually more vulnerable, they say. New operating systems have more bugs. But symbolism matters. Maduro is choosing sides. Chinese phones over American ones. The cyber war never ended. It just moved to Latin America. This crisis serves both leaders perfectly. Trump promised to use military force against cartels. He's delivering. Venezuelan Americans in Florida are watching. Vice President J.D. Vance went further. He dismissed war crime allegations with profanity. Maduro benefits too. Nothing rallies support like foreign threats. He's calling for a militia recruitment, but opposition leaders claim the rallies were empty. Venezuelans aren't buying it. This is where things get scary, really scary. Venezuelan F-16s are playing chicken with US destroyers. F-35s are deploying to counter them. Thousands of Marines are in the area. One mistake, one miscalculation, one trigger-happy pilot, that's all it takes. American-made jets could soon be fighting each other in Caribbean skies. The irony would be complete and deadly. Mexico's response reveals everything about regional sentiment. They want security cooperation, but they're terrified of US military intervention. President Claudia Sheinbaum was diplomatic, but firm. Each country must act within its own borders, no exceptions.
Well, Venezuela's F-16s buzzed a US destroyer very recently in the Caribbean Sea. It's irony, of course, because the F-16s were sold by the United States to Venezuela in 1982, and the deliveries happened in 1985 and 88, at a time when relations between the United States and Venezuela were excellent. You had a pro-US government in place, and it so happens that nearly 4 decades later, the tables have turned. You have an anti-US government in place, Nicolas Maduro, and the F-16s, of course, it's a very durable, resilient aircraft. It continues to be in Venezuelan service nearly 4 decades after they were first sold. Now, Venezuela acquired something like a squadron plus of F-16s in 2 variants, single-seat variants, twin-seat variants. About 24 of these aircraft were sold in the 80s. But then since the regimes changed, you had Hugo Chavez first, who was anti-US, and then Nicolas Maduro, who's also anti-US. The US has cut off supplies of spares and missiles to these Venezuelan F-16s. And it so happens that Venezuela continues to fly the F-16 because they regard it as a very capable platform. But there's a touch of irony here, the fact that you have F-16s being flown against US destroyers. And of course, the other thing is that Venezuela's Air Force today primarily comprises of Su-30 fighter aircraft, which are of Russian origin, which were bought by Hugo Chavez because he was pro-Russia. So you have these 2 very capable aircraft, one from the Russian Federation, the other from the United States, still in Venezuelan service. Now, it so happens that because of the spares issues, the F-16s, and of course the age, it's been 4 decades, from the original 24 F-16s, fewer than half a dozen are believed to be flying. So essentially these would be symbolic in nature, largely symbolic, and the Venezuelans cannot project the kind of air power that would need to overwhelm US destroyers that are currently deployed in the Caribbean Sea.
That's code. It means don't even think about striking cartels on Mexican soil. Other Latin American leaders are watching. If Trump can bomb boats in international waters, where does it end? Regional support is crucial. Without it, America fights alone. The court ruling creates a massive problem for Trump. If he can't legally deport Venezuelans, his entire policy crumbles. The Supreme Court will ultimately decide, but lower courts are already skeptical. Judge Andrew Oldham dissented. He's a Trump appointee. He argued presidential power is absolute in these matters, but he was outvoted 2-1. The message again very clear. Even conservative judges have limits. Beijing is loving this. While America fights Venezuela, China builds influence. Maduro's Huawei phone wasn't random. It's a statement. Venezuela chooses Chinese technology over American sanctions. China has loaned Venezuela billions, built infrastructure, provided technology. They're not leaving, no matter what Washington does. Some in Washington want more, much more. There's talk of invoking Article 5 of the Rio Treaty. That's the Hemispheric Defense Pact. It could authorize multilateral intervention. But most Latin American nations oppose military action. They remember the Cold War. American interventions didn't end well. Regional unity is breaking. That's exactly what China wants. Maduro is walking a tightrope. He needs to look strong without provoking invasion. His military has 340,000 active personnel, plus reserves he claims exceed 8 million. That's probably exaggerated, but numbers matter less than will. Do Venezuelans want to fight America? The empty recruitment rallies suggest not. Behind the military posturing lies economic reality. Venezuela's economy is destroyed. GDP has collapsed by 80%. Inflation is astronomical. 7 million Venezuelans have fled. This crisis extends far beyond Venezuela. Colombia is nervous. They share a 1,400-mile border with Venezuela. Drug cartels operate across that border. Colombian President Gustavo Petro opposes U.S. military action.
Los gringos están en la olla si piensan que invadiendo Venezuela resuelven su problema. Meten a Venezuela en el caso de Siria, solo que con el problema que se arrastran a Colombia lo mismo. Porque irían estos grupos a apoderarse de las riquezas del subsuelo, minerales, y eso significa más economía para la muerte, no para la vida. Así que yo le dije a Trump a través de sus emisarios que eso sería el peor error.
Brazil's Lula is even more critical. He calls Trump's approach gunboat diplomacy. Regional unity is fracturing. That weakens everyone. Moscow supplies Venezuela with weapons, Sukhoi jets, air defense systems, military advisors. Putin sees Venezuela as a strategic foothold, a way to challenge America in its backyard. Russian naval vessels regularly visit Venezuelan ports. Not many, but enough to send a message. The Caribbean is becoming a proxy battlefield. Between America and its adversaries, Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado thinks Trump will save them. She's appeared on Fox News praising American resolve, but she's made this bet before. With different American presidents, it hasn't worked. Edmundo Gonzalez is recognized by Washington as Venezuela's legitimate president, but he's in exile in Madrid. External recognition means nothing without internal power. US intelligence agencies doubt Maduro controls Tren de Aragua. Declassified memos contradict Trump's claims. But political narratives matter more than intelligence assessments. Trump needs Maduro to be the mastermind. It justifies everything: the sanctions, the military deployment, the airstrike. Truth is often a casualty in these confrontations. Every military escalation makes diplomatic resolution harder. Pride gets involved, national honor, political survival. Maduro can't look weak, neither can Trump. Both have domestic audiences to satisfy. That's how wars start, not through grand strategy, but through political necessity. 3 scenarios are possible here. None is good. First, military escalation. F-16s engage F-35s. Ships start shooting. Marines land on Venezuelan beaches. Regional war begins. Second, prolonged standoff. Military forces encircle each other. Tensions remain high. Nothing gets resolved. Third, negotiated de-escalation. Both sides step back, face saving compromises. Unlikely, but possible. This isn't just about Venezuela. It's about American credibility in Latin America as well. Can Washington lead without bombing? Can it build coalitions rather than impose solutions? China is offering an alternative model: economic partnerships without military threats, infrastructure without invasions. Latin American leaders are watching and choosing. Lost in the geopolitics are ordinary people. Venezuelan migrants fleeing poverty, American communities battling addiction, Mexican families caught between cartels and authorities. Military solutions rarely address human problems. They create new ones. The Caribbean crisis is a test of American leadership, regional unity, international law. The decisions made in Washington and Caracas will shape hemispheric relations for decades. Will the Americas remain united under US leadership or fragment into competing spheres of influence? This crisis began with drugs. It could end with something far worse. The Caribbean is burning. The question is whether anyone can put out the fire before it spreads, before it's too late. This is one of the most dangerous confrontations in America's backyard since the Cuban Missile Crisis. The difference? This time, there's no clear path to resolution. The Caribbean is on fire, and everyone's playing with matches. Thank you for watching Statecraft.